For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Sane Dhlamini. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joined me for Suttner's View, a weekly commentary on South Africa's political scene. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
Many people felt a sense of euphoria after the Constitutional Court's judgment on Nkandla. What do you think of how things have turned up?
I think that people were very happy because they have a sense of powerlessness, that over a number of years they've done this, they've done that, and they've tried court cases, and it's been stretching on for a number of years, and there has been no sense of stopping the Nkandla saga, because not only did the public protector fine 246 million was spent, but it was said that even more had to be spent afterwards. And they say that amongst the expenses, beyond the expenses that she raised as being privately beneficial, there were other expenses that were not really included, so that in fact the evaluation would be greater. So many people had a sense that when this judgment came, it made a big impact on the population as far as I could see. What was impressive to me is that on the one hand, the court presented its findings in a way that was very accessible. You didn't have to be a trained lawyer to understand that judgment. Secondly, it was very, very careful, because the court is unhappy to see itself as solving political problems. Now, that's what some people call lawfare, that instead of solving your political matters in the battlefield of politics, you take them to courts and you engage in what Dennis Davis and Michelle Leroux were calling, but I think it comes from overseas, lawfare. So the court doesn't really want to step in and resolve matters. So they were very careful in defining what are the roles of the legislature, what is the role of the president, and then where does the court come in. And they made it clear that the president and the National Assembly did not have to just accept the recommendations. If they examined those recommendations and they found them unacceptable, they had the right to challenge them in court. Now, they didn't do that. And that was what made them actions that were contrary to the law. In the case of the president, they showed that he failed to exercise his obligations as president, not to spend money of the state, not to ensure that money was not spent from public money, which was beneficial to himself, and in the case of the National Assembly, that they had to hold him to account. So I think the court decision was very good. Now, I think the advocate that Zuma got, Jeremy Gauntlet, understood that there were problems with the case, and that was why they made a number of admissions before the case. They offered to pay the money, they accepted that the public protector's findings were binding unless you challenged them. That had already been found in the Supreme Court of Appeal. So they made these admissions, hoping that by making these admissions, that the judgment of the court would not be very damning. And Gauntlet went so far as to almost plead with the court not to make a declaratory order to the effect that the president had violated his oath of office and the Constitution. But that's exactly what the court did do. The court did not suddenly bring that in. They framed the whole judgment within the context of what were the duties of the president as president under the Constitution and according to the oath that he swore. And they found, they used the phrase self-help quite a lot, that when you pick and choose which laws you abide by and you act contrary to the law to resolve issues, that is what they called self-help. And when you use the word self-help in society, it really means everyone does what they like and law has no value.
And do you think there was any value in the impeachment motion in the National Assembly, given the large numbers of the ANC MPs?
You see, one of the reasons why Nkandla didn't want this general declaratory order is that he was worried that a finding that the president was in contravention of his oath of office would be used as a basis for bringing a motion of impeachment. And indeed it was. And my first reaction was to think that the DA were like a broken record keeping on about, we'll bring impeachment. And the effect of bringing impeachment proceedings is to force the ANC to unite. However, you can bring a very strong case to argue that given that the president was in breach of his office, such serious violation of his office, you need to make the stand to say he is therefore unfit to be president. But what was, to me, very impressive in what I watched of the proceedings is the way the opposition united to call for the recusal or the stepping down of the Speaker. And it was very eloquently put when first the Minister of Defence, then Naledi Pandor afterwards said, let's just take a vote on whether we should go on to the next matter, whether the Speaker stays in office or not. And what was interesting is Corne Mulder from the FF Plus said, you can't correct something that's wrong by voting. And I think they really managed to show, EFF were very, very rude to the Speaker. And because the Speaker had been shown to have failed to discharge her duties, it was very, very hard for her to say, look, you're out of order, because their reply will be, you shouldn't be in the chair at all. And that is really what was happening. So I think it was, on the whole, a very significant debate, even if we can say it had no chance of success as such. Some people say, well, they should have prepared longer, and if they'd prepared longer, they could have swayed some ANC people. But I don't think anyone in the ANC is going to go against the caucus decision because they'll be removed. Some people say, well, what about Pravin Gordhan is a man of principle or something like that. Now, the man wants to remain Minister of Finance. If he just goes and acts according to his conscience on this, he won't be Minister of Finance. So I think we've got to understand that whether it was not, I don't know that they would have gained more later, but it was a very important demonstration of what opposition parties, who are not the majority, could achieve in Parliament.
And what do you think of the civil society's move for Zuma to resign?
I think it's a very important demonstration of public dissatisfaction, which is being raised in a number of fora, business fora, academics, church people, sections of the union movement, sections of MK and so forth, other veterans. The problem I have is what is the plan from here? And Govan Mbeki once said, the problem with the speech is that it blows away with the wind. And we've got to ask is, how do you prevent the momentum from just blowing away with the wind? The answer that I have learned in the past is that you have to build something. And however urgent it is to remove Zuma, we've got to ask ourselves, what is the plan to do this? How does it unfold? Who do you try to draw in? There were a number of personalities there who are very distinguished people. In some cases, they represent a lot of people. In some cases, they represent their jacket. Or they are people of integrity, but they don't, they go away. They don't go and report back to a group of people who will then do this and that. They say on the 27th of April there will be a march, but again, what are you building? And my view is that we've got to bring together a number of interest groups which are not only political, which come from a number of sectors, in order to recover our democracy, in order to, including removing Zuma, but also to rebuild the democratic culture that we need for this country under the constitution that we have.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about the Constitutional Court judgment.